Welcome to Team Futurism. This week we're going to be talking about the future of cities, and there's been a lot of articles and a lot of videos on YouTube recently about these futuristic smart cities. And there's a lot to say about them. I think that we're just kind of going to go through like our informal impressions and takes about them. Um, I generally am a little bit skeptical of a lot of these things. But I just want to jump into it and see what you think, Devin. What is your impression of, for example, lay a couple of out there that we've been looking into, the Line in Saudi Arabia. There was Telosa, this billionaire dude who did like diapers.com and a few things like this. He has this Telosa vision where he wants to, probably someplace in Arizona or the desert, he wants to create, multi-billion dollar smart city that has like equity, built in and some like, I don't know, buy-in from the community. Some interesting ideas out there. There's a lot more. I mean, just one other one that's like actually happening is the Egypt is creating a new city that's, I believe, to the east of Cairo, and they want to move a couple million folks from Cairo over there, which is interesting. It's happening, but it's a little bit suspect in the fact that I've heard that part of the reason why they're doing that is because every time there is a big political upheaval in Egypt, it takes place in this one particular square in Cairo that's pretty close to the Capitol building. So they're like, how do we not have people have uprisings? Oh, we move the Capitol over here hundreds of miles away, and we make it so that only rich people live there, right, who aren't going to be protesting the government. So little suspect. Still, maybe there's some interesting things happening there. Devin, it sounds like you might be a little bit skeptical of these futuristic cities as well. Let me get like your general takes here.
Can you hear me shaking my head?
I can definitely see you shaking your head.
Me shaking my head in grief. That's funny too, the Egyptian thing where you're like, yeah, it sounds a little suspect. I'm like, would those several million people be all part of a similar group? Because like that's always sketchy. Anytime they're like, hey, all you guys in this one group, we want you somewhere else. It's like,
right.
I don't know, guys. Future cities, man. Future cities. The Line in Saudi Arabia. I've seen a couple of in-depth kind of videos about it, and some kind of propaganda style videos, obviously released by the Saudi government, and some like mock-ups and sketch-ups. It's interesting because I've seen a couple of different things about. One of them was like I forget what movie it was. I think it was Ready Player One or something, where the all of the poor people live below ground and all of the rich people live above ground. But I there was one of the videos I saw where it seemed like there was going to be some kind of component like that to it, where like there's this whole section of the line that's like underground, and that's where all of like the laborers
I actually didn't know that, but that seems like something Saudi Arabia would totally pull.
It could be like, propaganda from people who just want to stir up shit about it or something like that. But the thing that I can't understand about that is, if you're doing like a city in the middle of the desert, you would think you'd want to create like climate zones. You know what I mean? Like anytime you cluster stuff together, if you introduce enough biomass, you create an artificial microclimate that sustains itself more or less. If you have everything in a line, then everything is going to have to be power intensive to provide like shade, water, fucking air conditioning, all of the stuff that you need to kind of live comfortably.
I think that one of the pitches is that the infrastructure is easy because it's in a line or something. I mean, I don't completely understand that, because it seems like if you had like the same amount of space but in a square, it would be easier to have like the hub and it goes out onto the spokes to distribute energy and water and like everything.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how that works, because we're talking about not only going on a line but also going vertically for all of these things. So I mean, I just don't know. I just don't know how. Well, this is the thing, is that a lot of engineers and city planners throughout history have kind of tried this line thing before, and it's never really worked out. I believe it was in Germany. I think it was Germany, maybe it was Spain. They did this before, and it just became another normal like street in the city because it built out around this line thing. The
Right.
Saudi Arabia vision is to go up, so it's not just going to be a street, but it's going to go vertically.
Right.
The whole idea, like, honestly, it just sounds stupid. I mean, maybe I would go there and it would be somehow kind of magical and it would kind of work or something. I just think it sounds too artificial. And I'm even all about artificial shit. Like, I'm totally kind of into it inherently because that's what people do. We build artificial spaces. But no, like, I feel your skepticism for the Saudi Arabia thing. Can I drop a couple of just like my personal beefs with a lot of these visions?
Please.
So one is just for, whenever these things are tried, at least on a small scale, they always fail because in America, at least, they always still end up being car centric. So there's this phenomenon of trying to create the new town square in America. And there's one in Las Vegas, for example, where it's these beautiful streets that it looks like it has a lot of shops, and then above them they'll have like law offices and like real estate offices. So it kind of like does this thing, but and you're able to walk around and have this nice walking experience. But then like when you zoom out from it, you see that it's this little cluster of a couple of streets surrounded by parking lots. And so everyone had to drive in, park their fucking car, and then go out and have like a fake experience of walking around as if you lived in a city center. And that's how America is doing these like new city center things, Yeah. And I think that that's a little bit of a fatal flaw with a lot of these things because they're all trying to be non-car centric, right? But I'm just skeptical. Because when you look at the pictures of them, there almost is never a street view, and the street view that you do see, it never seems like it is a real city street view with actual density where people like work on the bottom floor and live on the top floor, right? It doesn't have that like real density to it. It always seems like it's kind of just like large open spaces and blah 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 blah. I don't know. So that's like one skepticism. Built on top of that is this other skepticism I have, or criticism I have, that I mean, let me just put it this way. I can't imagine one of these people who has this vision in mind for a future smart city ever having like a red light district. Imagine having like a seedy, like building in a seedy
That's hilarious.
With seedy street corners, with like strip clubs, with like bars open too late, with blah blah blah, like all of those things that like actually make cities kind of rad,
like a Blade Runner style city where there's like
yeah. And well, I mean, like San Francisco isn't the same place if you take away North Beach with the strip clubs and then some sketchy parts of the Tenderloin, the market area where they have like kind of like low key epic weed dispensaries, shit like that, and it's like it makes sense that those establishments are there in those locations because the whole fucking area is kind of like we used to be the place where sailors would come here and like get fucked up and like sell drugs and have a bunch of illicit prostitution situations.
Do you think in the
that's just not going to happen in this case?
Do you think in the cities of the future, the utopian cities of the future, that they'll pay actors to be homeless people?
What's kind of funny is I'm writing a novel where that actually is a thing that takes place.
No, really?
Yeah, you channel the thing that I've been actually thinking a lot about.
That's hella funny, man. Yeah, dude, we need people to perform homelessness for us so that we can feel erudite and privileged, man. Otherwise, how will we know? How will we know we've made it, dude? Nah, man. That's funny. That's an interesting concept. It's like that is true. Like maybe is what you're saying is that a lot of these like future city concepts are a little too like Disney-fied, where it's like you know, like they're like, oh, look at all of these like nice shops you can walk to and shit like that. And it's like, yeah, that's not really what I mean, like that's not the dope part about living in a dense environment. The
Mhm.
dope part about living in a dense environment is the diversity of experience.
Right.
And like, I don't know, here's my fucking beef, dude. Here's my
Okay.
beef
Okay.
with the whole concept of future cities. And I'm gonna reference the last Joe Rogan that I heard. Would you hear that Siddhartha? I can't remember his last name, but it was about cobalt mining in the Congo.
Yes, I listened to about half of it. Yeah.
Oh, fuck me, dude.
I
It was
know.
like,
Yeah.
it was so brutal to listen to that. And like, I'm like a carpenter. All my tools are lithium ion batteries.
Yeah.
Fucking all my devices are lithium ion
Maybe
batteries.
give it like a very quick overview of what this guy was saying, because it was a
Yeah.
lot of new information to me, like how just like his details there.
I mean, basically, this guy he's been following and studying human trafficking for 20 years, for his entire career, his entire life. Found out somebody tipped him off to how insane the conditions were in the Congo for cobalt mining. He goes there, kind of by the skin of his teeth, like gets into some of these places and escapes the country without being murdered by like the roving militias that are trying to protect the world from seeing how depraved like this money grab is in the Congo, where there's open pit mines where there's 10 to 15,000 people in like sarongs and flip-flops, fucking with little rock hammers, digging away at the ground to get cobalt out, which is a super toxic substance to like have on your body or breathe in. And it's like cobalt is the critical ingredient in all of our modern battery technology.
Hmm.
Everything that's lithium ion requires an amount of cobalt to, you know, it's like it helps with temperature control and like different things inside the battery, but it's critical. They haven't figured out how to not use it yet. So
So
that's
like an
I
electric
found
car takes a ton of it, apparently,
that's
like a
what I yeah.
ton.
The and that it made me kind of reflect a lot on just like the march of progress, like the march of progress in technology. I live in the Bay Area where every asshat it like has a Tesla, and
Mhm.
like it seems cool, you know, and I think a lot of them they're kind of smug, you know what I mean? I think because they think that they're fucking like, oh yeah, I'm dude, I'm fucking doing what's right for the
Mhm.
environment, dude, for global warming, for fucking, and it's like, no, you're not. You're just figuring out a way to flex that isn't explicitly damaging something that's socially popular right now. It's like it's super socially conscious to talk about the environment and shit
Well,
like that.
I mean, I do like the way that Peter Zion will talk about this, because he's very skeptical, apparently, of like electric cars and these sorts for these exact reasons. But he will say that in order to actually positively impact the environment with your Tesla, you have to drive it for like 20 years or something like this. I mean,
Mm,
it was like there's a, I'm making that number up. I don't know exactly what it is, but like it's not
sure.
like the sort of thing where it, after, driving it to LA and back 5 times, it's paid off in terms of the environmental impact that you put into it. You put so
Right.
much environmental impact into creating that car that you really do have to own it very long time to make it worth it while. Whereas a typical car has fewer parts. Yes, it uses gasoline, and yes, it's bad for the environment, but it's. I mean, I don't know how it prices out. I'd have to start making things up. But apparently, you're just not as doing as well for the environment as you think that you are. I'm like anti-car in general. I'm like, if we can just get
Fair.
away from fucking cars, that's the answer there. To me personally, I know that especially in America, because of our city design, that's not going to happen. But I
Yeah.
mean, I sold my car. It's been 5, 6 years, and was the best decision I ever made. Like my wife has a car. We've got our little Prius. And I drive it maybe twice a week for like maybe grand total of 20 minutes a week because I have to. I don't know. Like I would like to not even have to do that, but I don't know. I think I derailed you a little bit with my.
No, not really. I mean, it's like I guess the whole thing is that when I think about like a future city, I
Yeah.
think like people who design like future cities are thinking it's gonna be like those fucking Chinese TikToks where like the lady like puts her fucking toothbrush in the ultrasonic cleaner and then like a little fucking drawer comes out that she puts her shoes in and then there's like a gadget for everything. Like it's some weird redux of like 1950s like housewife convenience technology or some shit like that. But it's like at the end of the day, a futuristic city is a city that probably isn't as luxurious as people live now because it's more integrated with wherever the fuck it is. It's like this whole conceptualization of like a city that exists as a concept independent of the place that it is fucking such a boomer way to look at innovating city technology where it's like I swear to God, like boomers and Gen X, like they just don't it's like there's like the earth and humans and then technology and they're all separate and they all have their own separate conceptualizations of how they work together and stuff like that. And it's like, nah man, they're all the same system. Like if you're gonna build a future city, build it into like a cliff or like do something interesting with a river or do something interesting that integrates it with the natural environment, makes it a place where it's easier, a lower impact general lifestyle on the fucking area that it's in. That's futuristic.
So what do you think about like the floating cities like in Indonesia they're building, and I think also South Korea might be the other place where they're building these things into the oceans so that with sea level rise, it's not going to impact, and they get the energy, I believe, from something happening underneath the surface there. Those to me look pretty cool. It also looks like the sort of place where you would want to go like visit for a day, not necessarily live, and work.
Yeah.
Although maybe they'll build it out so it will be livable. I'm not too sure, but those look cool. Like, I mean, I don't know.
But like anything, I guess part of it is like knowing the constraints of the environment that you're working with, and like anything that's next to the ocean is going to require so much maintenance. Like salt water is infinitely powerful. There is like nothing more destructive than salt water, in terms of like natural environments. And that's why like energy harvesting from wave technology has taken so many years to figure out, because it's like, well, you leave something submerged in the ocean for a year, it doesn't matter what you made it out of, it's going to get eaten away. You know what I mean? And it's going to break down and it's going to need repair and maintenance. And it's like, I don't know, man, like, fuck, like build a city in a bamboo forest, like mostly out of where all the shit's out of bamboo. And like, not everybody gets to be in like a sweet stud frame house with air conditioning. And like, you have to kind of work with the situation more than being so insane about controlling the way that your environment.
Let me push back a little bit here. I mean, I do want to say that I agree in spirit. I totally do. But let me push back a little bit, just because let's look what humans are, what we do, and I think where we're going, whether we like it or not, is that we destroy environments and we remake them to serve us. That is just what, like, we're animals, right? You look at badgers, you look at like hawks, pick a thing, they do their own thing. This is what we do. This is what we do, and we're gonna do this. Also, our biggest problem, and this goes back to the cobalt mining, is just energy. It's energy and water and a couple of things, right? If we're in an awkward place right now because we want the goodies from the future, but we can't actually have them without really causing a lot of harm to like hundreds of millions of people because of sweatshops and cobalt mines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that we are so good at not thinking about. In any case, we are going to, unless we, Putin drops a bomb on the West or something, we're going to eventually have nuclear fusion energy, so free and abundant energy as much as we want, no downside. That might
Yeah.
be 50, 100, 200 years out, but it's going to happen. So that's going to solve energy. Well, I mean, we also have, I mean, geothermal oftentimes is not a bad thing. You know, wind in certain places is not a bad thing. There are ways for us to get like real, free, cheap energy. Like, I'm not a big fan of solar panels, but like if you were to solar panel over like a quarter of the Sahara Desert, it would give the Earth like 7 times as much energy as we use right now. Things like that. I mean, it's not like it's inconceivable for us to get as like an abundance of power. We're going to. We also will solve, I'm sure, water, because the face of the planet is like 80 or 90% water or something like this. Like we're surrounded by water. We just haven't figured that out yet. It's a problem to be solved. As Elon Musk says, it's an engineering problem, right? It's not like a philosophical problem. It's just engineering. Once we solve those things, again, hundreds and hundreds of years into the future, we can let everyone participate in this future thing, hypothetically. Politics notwithstanding, we could, and then I think we could really start to become creative with future cities. The problem is we're not there yet. We're pretending like we have magical battery powered cars and etc. We're pretending like we have that, and we do, but we do with a price that's really uncomfortable when you start looking at it. Yeah, that's my pushback, which is kind of a half pushback, because I think that it is. You know, I can't even say that without kind of ignoring the harms that we're causing right now.
Yeah, it's like I feel you, and I think there's a way to merge those two ideas where I think that it's okay. I mean, obviously, anywhere where humans live, it's naturally destructive. It's impossible for us to live in concert with other animals and stuff like that unless we're literally living in like fucking teepees and like being nomadic, you know, and that's just never going to happen again. But there is a certain brand of insanity to making a city like LA, or making cities like, if it's a conceptual future city, it has to be near water, dude. Like, you can't just keep building fucking cities in the middle of the desert and being like, yeah, we're going to need some water from way the fuck over there. It's like the amount of water that LA and Arizona and parts of like the southwestern desert siphon off of the Colorado River and the Klamath River. I mean, it's like all of that shit gets fed from the central northern United States. Like the entire southwestern quadrant of our country is all stolen water from watersheds that are fucking hundreds and thousands of miles away from where they're originating from. And it's like that kind of stewardship of resource, that's what should be at the center of the idea of a futuristic city. Is like, we don't have the technology yet to just put something in the middle of nowhere and make it work, but we do have the technology now to do gentle terraforming of landscapes, to like actually be thinking about, I mean, like the Central Valley always drives me nuts, because in California, where it's like, dude, you drive for like, go from San Francisco to LA, and like 4 hours of your trip is driving through farmlands where there's no water there.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh my God.
And they're like, and there's all these signs where they're like, what the fuck? Like, why can't we, you're like cutting off our water. And it's like, cause you started a farm in the middle of the fucking desert, you idiot.
In California, 70% of our water supply goes to farms. 70%. And that's like raising fucking almonds and shit. That like, we should not have almond farms in California. It makes no sense. We used to have cotton. Guess what? We don't have cotton anymore because it took too much water. Guess what takes more water than cotton? Almonds. It's stupid. Like, they should not have almond farms there.
It's just absolutely insane the way that humans are like, shoot first, ask questions later with like settlements and shit. And that's something that like, in the small amount of places I've been in Europe, there is like, because they're not working with very much, a lot of cities are clustered. A lot of major cities are clustered around a river. and they're trying to like use that river in as many ways as they can for entertainment, for water. They're stewarding the waterways in certain ways. They're stewarding the land in certain ways. America is so wide open. It's so broad. There's so much area here to settle. And it's like, it's not that crazy to just stop being so haphazard about it and actually have some kind of planning structure where it's like, all right, we want to make a future city. Here's a new big city. And instead of letting a small town become gentrified to the point where it expands, or, I mean, that's kind of the model that a lot of America works on, is like, okay, this is a cute small town and a bunch of people keep moving here and it becomes a city and it becomes this and it becomes a little bit bigger. It's like, I don't know, man. How about like a planning commission for this kind of thing? How about, but we're just not there. Politically, we're not there. We're still fighting over fucking scraps. These idiots are still fighting over like ridiculous shit, like cutting Medicare and like cutting Social Security. I'm like, dude, stop. We already figured it out. We're giving old people money. Like, fuck off, dude. Find something else to like litigate, man. You know what I'm saying?
You know, one thing that I think is interesting is that if I were a billionaire, like this guy who did diapers.com, I think I'm getting that right, for the Telosa place, this would absolutely also be my hobby horse. I would absolutely want to start a futuristic city just because I love cities. I think that they are the coolest work of art, the coolest thing that humans do. We create cities, and somehow, oh my God, we have created amazing cities all over the globe. Like you said, in places where they do not need to be, where they should not be. We've done it, and that it's cool. And like now, part of that equation should be to be more environmentally conscious from the ground up and on and on. But like, oh my God, I would absolutely do what that diapers.com guy is doing. I hope I'm getting that right. Where he hired a badass architectural firm to build it out and to do the design. And I'm very skeptical, but I like how he has some sort of a scheme so that there is communal ownership in the land.
That's cool.
So that, you know, ideally, if you live there, you have like an equity stake in not only your own little pocket of property, but like you want the whole world, you want the whole environment to thrive, the whole city. You want it to be, you know, a thriving place.
Yeah, that's critical.
There's cool shit happening here, and I think that there are enough of these projects happening, maybe the line notwithstanding, but there are enough of these projects happening. Something's gonna probably work, you know, so that maybe, you know, when our children, when my child is my age, maybe she'll be living in one of these places and thinks that, you know, anybody who's living in a museum ass city like San Francisco is like nuts, you know, because of the level of amenities that we just don't even know are comprehensible, and the level of smartness, so that if no one's sitting on this fucking bench, the street light up ahead is not turning on, but it's going to turn on when someone sits there. That's that sort of a thing. I think that that's possible. I mean, you know, maybe these guys are all just doing vanity projects that they're gonna find isn't hip anymore 10 years from now, so they'll abandon the projects. Or, I mean, who knows? Who knows? But it's interesting. I mean, I'm kind of like for these guys trying it. I just can't help thinking, like any, you know, business enterprise thing, 50 to 70% of them are just gonna fail and be embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, dude. Like efficiency, like you're like how smart the cities will be in the future, where it's like, you know, the light turns off at the bench. Like the whole point of making a future city, in my mind, is making it more efficient, because that's the part that we lose in a lot of our cities. They're just not efficient, and so they suck. You know, there's a lot of cities that just straight up suck because it's hard to get from a cool place to a cool place, or there's no center to things, or there's nowhere to like enjoy a cool natural moment, or like, or the transport or the public transit sucks, or whatever it is. And it's like, it's all efficiency, man. As soon as you can get people, like how many man hours get lost in inefficient cities, and like how productive, you know, ecologically, like actual, you know, human productivity wise could a city be if it was organized in a way that made everything easier instead of just having this haphazard approach to kind of piecing things together one at a time. And, you know, part of that would be utilizing technology efficiently and not extravagantly, to where there's like, you know, smart things like that where the light turns off when you need it to, but there's not a bunch of gadgets and shit everywhere, you know what I mean? And like that's kind of what I meant earlier, where it's like it would be a shame if the future city is just a bunch of shitty gadgets everywhere and shit that kind of like looks tight. But it would be really cool if it was a very simple place where there's not a lot of extra bullshit. You can keep all the extra crap that you like inside your house, but the actual environment is very clean and very efficient and somewhat integrated with the place that it is set in.
But at the same time, can we please, dear God, have some warm environments with nice brick walls that humans just, we relate to things like brick walls. We love like exposed beams. We relate to these things. We can't just have hospital sterile environments that we're walking around in. We really can't. I mean, one of my favorite cities is Lisbon, Portugal, where it's one of the oldest cities in Europe. I think it's older than Rome or something. It's just like this ancient city. And it is, there's not a square foot in that city that you can't tell is just ancient, and a million gazillion people have walked over that place. There's graffiti everywhere. There's like grime, but it's like all in a great spirit. Everything.
Yeah.
It's just so warm and so human and so awesome. And I think that, I mean, maybe I'm naive, but like I think with the right vision, that sort of warmth can actually be built into a modern city. It's not that hard, because it's like brick. It's like a couple of materials. Like materials are so important, and I never see that on these. If they ever have a street view for these futuristic things, which they usually don't, but if they ever do, it's so. I wanna take one of these like famous architecture dudes and be like, hey, we're humans, right? You like, who's gonna be walking down the street? A fucking human. Okay, let's put a little bit of brick. Let's have a little bit of warmth. Make some shit out of mud. Exactly.
Let me bring, and maybe this could be the way that we close out talking about future cities, because I think it's weirdly, as we're talking about it, the thing that could be most salient to like the vibe of a future city, and whether or not, because like what's the one thing that is the chaos element that disrupts everybody's plans in the city? Can you guess what I'm thinking of? There's one element that fucks everything up, and it's not because it's a fucked up thing. It just is a force that every business owner, every person with a public space, everybody has to think about all the time.
Are you thinking weather or?
No, it's a human element.
Okay. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, okay, yeah. My mind went there, but I was like, no. Okay.
I can't say that. No, I think that's the crazy thing, because I think when you and I were growing up in Sacramento, something that I remember us talking about was like, why is there not a place where we can just go be inside in a warm, safe place and like play music and just hang out and have like a jam session? Or why isn't there like a place where we can, and it's like, well, because it economically doesn't make sense. But not only that, you're going to get fucking homeless people that are going to need a warm place to hang out, and it's going to get taken over by people who need that because they need it, not because they want it. And like, I think about, when you think about city architecture and how dope you could make things, it's pretty contingent on people not needing to seek out warm shelter to survive. If you took that element out of a fucking modern city, that need to house people, like imagine the fucking beauty that your public spaces could have. Like you could have all of these things that, like, you know, like we don't get to have nice things in cities because homeless people shit on those things and pee on those things and sleep under those things. And it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with the superstructure that we live in that just refuses to provide homes for like 1 million people, for like less than like 0.2% of our population is homeless. It's an absurdly small number of people that can't find a place to stay at night. And like, we just won't do it. We won't solve that problem. We absolutely refuse to throw money or resources at it. And
It's not money or resources, it's the approach, you know?
It's the approach. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but yeah, I mean, that is such a like an American perspective too, because in Europe, a lot of times they have actually solved these problems because they're just better at these things. They also
Right.
have fewer people and more, better infrastructure in general. But also, you know the YouTube channel Not Just Bikes.
No.
It's a great like urban, pro-urbanist channel. It's really great, and the guy is from America, but now he lives in Amsterdam, and so all of his videos are like, this is essentially America sucks because why, Europe is awesome is because
Sure.
But he has like this recent video about third places, and this is something that's very common in Europe, which is
not home, not work.
Yeah, it's a third place.
Right.
So in London, it's the pub.
Right.
In Amsterdam, there are all these
Which is a bit
open
sad, if we're being
places.
honest.
Yeah, in
Kind of sad to
America,
have the bar be the third place.
well, I mean, maybe, but like it's so normal. It's just not bad. I mean, people don't have drinking problems there like they do here. Obviously, people have drinking problems, but it's not like in America because I mean, I spent a decent amount of time in London, and it's just normal to go out and have one beer. It's not normal to go out and have 10. Like,
Sure.
you see so few drunk people in the pubs in England. I've even been
Fair.
hanging out there like at shows like late at night. You don't see many like sloppy people compared to
Fair.
America. I'm 3 blocks from a bar. I could walk there right now at 4:26. There's gonna be sloppy people there right fucking now, playing pool with their guts out, just being gross and sloppy. There's just less of that there. And I mean, maybe, that's England in their third places. Paris, they have their cafe scene, where you show up and waiters don't try to push you out. They're not hovering over you getting to try to leave, because their culture is, this is your third place. You're hanging out for not 10, 20 minutes, 3 hours,
That's cool.
And people come and people go, and it's your third place, and it's just like their culture. We have none of that here. We have Starbucks, where they do try to turn you out. If you don't order something within 5 minutes, they're going to try to kick your ass out.
Totally.
So,
yeah, I don't know.
I forget where we're going to land that point, but I mean, like, I do think like America is kind of fundamentally culturally, we have a lot of work to do. I think that we have a lot of work to do about homelessness, but about also, man, when you said the thing about like we had no place when we were younger, we had no place just to hang out and kick it and play guitars and be semi-rowdy but not insane. You were right. Like, we found places, but they were like our apartments. It was like our apartments. Yeah, totally. Or a coffee shop that closed at 7:00.
Yeah, you want to vibe. So I guess to circle around to the point of the podcast, which is future cities and the things that you'll have to like resolve to get a city to actually be futuristic. You're gonna have to make sure everybody within like 100-mile radius has a home, and that if people want to come there to fucking like beg for money because it's a cool futuristic place, you're gonna have to have some kind of system in place to put them in a fucking house, man. Like that is something that's like no city of the future is actually going to be able to make itself cool without making sure that there's not people who are desperate for basic necessities that are going to pee and poop on everything and use drugs on the street. Like, you're going to need to have places for them to use drugs, like talk about shit that you're going to need in a future city. You're going to need places for homeless people that can't exist in your fucking futuristic city or everything's fucked. You're going to have places for all kinds of different people to use drugs, like whether you like it or not. Like, people are going to be fucking doing drugs on the street. Better for them to be doing it in your little fucking government sponsored building like they do it in Canada, where it's like you go in, you can get your heroin, And when you want to stop because your life kind of sucks, you can go upstairs to the treatment facility. You know what I mean? And like,
I'm reminded of a Tim Dillon take rant where he says that, you know, he's being funny, but he has this rant where he's like, LA should just embrace the fact that they're the homeless capital of the world. Stop trying to fix it. Just embrace it. So that when people come, they're like, oh, there's Skid Row. Oh, cool. And we'll start doing tours of Skid Row, you know, where everyone can look at the homeless people. And it's just part of who we are, because you know what we do well? We do a lot of things poorly. You know what we do well? We attract homeless people. His rant is funny. I mean, he's funny about it. Obviously, he's being cynical. But yeah, we have a lot of work to do there.
There is a third option, and I'll wrap up my point here,
Okay,
which
yeah.
is that when I was in my early 20s, I hitchhiked all the way up and down the West Coast a couple times, from LA to Seattle and back. And one of those times, I stayed at I don't know if you remember the Occupy Wall Street movement. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It was like, so every single little city from LA all the way to Seattle, and even teeny little cities like Petaluma, had a little encampment where people at first would camp there and be like, we stand in solidarity, fuck the 1%. Like, they didn't really have a super specific goal, but they were just like, this is bullshit. It was right after the financial collapse when all these banks got bailed out. And so people were just, you know, making these encampments, standing in solidarity with the movement. And it was like it was very cute and hopeful at first. Then, as any time that there's a bunch of amenities that are flooding into a place because a bunch of donations would come in, people are sleeping there, so people would bring, you know, people who didn't want to sleep there would bring tents and food. I stayed at one in Eugene, Oregon that had enough food to feed 1,000 people a day for 2 years. And I was working in the kitchen there.
That's crazy. Whoa.
Dude, it was nuts. We were serving over 1,000 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, to anyone who came for food, right? And there was 2 20-foot shipping containers that were full to the brim of nice food, and donations came in every single day. And it was crazy because you see that, like, there is a class of wealthy people who are like, I don't actually want to give money to a faceless charity, but if there's a bunch of people camping out at this place down here and they're cold, I'm going to go to Walmart and buy a bunch of sleeping bags because I actually do want to help, and it seems like the nice thing to do. It's like there is a third option that we had for a minute, which was you bring all these people together in a fucking camp, and then you got to police it, which sucks. You know what I'm saying? You got to go through and make sure that fucking people aren't stepping on needles and shit. But like, it was borderline utopian for homeless people. You know, it was like you got fed square meals. There was plenty of sleeping materials around for everybody. There was usually cops because the cops were naturally suspicious of the place. So they'd come through and patrol and make sure that nobody's like prostituting or there's not like insane illicit drug use, you know. And every once in a while they'd bust like a tent that had like 100 needles in it. But I lived in these camps for like 2-3 months and I never had a problem. I never saw anybody get hurt. I never saw anything happen other than a lot of good people coming together to try to help a lot of people who were having a tough time.
Did you, I've heard that, I mean, that is fascinating. I would love to talk more about that if we had more time, but have you heard that, like, the hot take about the Occupy Wall Street movement is that they had all these tents when the movement was over? They're like, what do we do with these tents? They just gave them to homeless people. And like, that's why now all the homeless people have tents. There was no such thing, or like there was like 10% of the problem with people in tents pre-Occupy, post-Occupy, like everybody's got a tent, and I can go 4 blocks from my house and see them all right now, all up and down that X Street in Sacramento and W Street in Sacramento. And that is supposedly, I've never like verified this, but a couple of people have said this, that like people have, you know, studied this. It's because of Occupy that we have that problem.
Can't kill all the snakes by getting mongooses, dude. Now you got a mongoose problem.
Exactly. Oh my God. Well, hey, so future cities. I mean, there's a ton to do here. I would actually like to talk more sometime about maybe another batch of them that I would like to look into a little bit more.
Yeah, we should do a deep dive on one.
I would like to do a deep dive on one.
We
Absolutely.
should pick one, maybe the Line or something that actually, because the Line is gonna get built. and it would be interesting to pick one and do a deep dive on it and give a nice detailed pros and cons about the city in particular, because I think
Maybe, yeah, we should interview somebody too, have somebody on who's has some inside knowledge on one of these. That'd be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll get that scheduled. Yeah, well, hey, hey man, well, yeah, we'll be back soon with more from Team Futurism, and yeah, we'll chat soon, Devin.
Later, dog.